because the weather's cooperating outside, at least so far. But also it's a beautiful day because this day has finally come to fruition. The conference is because of Dean. And I know, speaking on behalf of the conference committee, we hope you find each of you great value in these 2 days, each in your own way. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce our keynote speaker. He has family relatives that had gone to Carlisle Indian School, as well as family members who have attended Indian schools out west. Many of you, if not most of you, probably recognize him or know him as Cloud Dancing in Dr. Quinn TV series. And for those of you who may be Rangeville fans, you will also recognize him perhaps as the Naked Indian Spirit in Rangeville 2. He is not only an actor, he's a cultural advisor, he's a teacher, he's a technical advisor. He's a man, something you don't know about him though is that he's a man with 12 sons. I think it speaks perhaps to not only his virility, but also his humanity. And I say that because 6 of those sons are his by birth, but 6 of those sons are adopted. He is Osage, Cherokee, and Lakota heritage. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to once again, and after you listen to him speak, the last bit of description I think you will absolutely agree with me on is that he's just a really nice guy. Very good.
Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I went to school, boarding school. My name is Larry Sellers. I'm of Osage, Cherokee, and Lakota ancestry. My Wajaji name is Epatoe. And in Wajaji, or Osage, the way we're viewed as Osage today, where it translates as crashing horns. I am the Buffalo Bull clan with the Osage people. And when buffalo butt heads, horns hit, it's the sound that it makes in our clan name. And there's no way to translate that to English. So we just break it down as far as possible and say crashing horns. And then Lakota is night inji, which defends himself. So I guess both ways they knew I was going to be butting heads with somebody. So. It's like my wife today. I told her in the morning I leave, I said, I'm going out and rape, pillage, and plunder. She said, just be home for dinner. So. One of the things, I work in the movie industry, or we're still associated, but I don't work there right now, is that oftentimes Native people, indigenous peoples were dehumanized. And I don't know if whoever's a combat vet who has dodged a few bullets once in a while, if any of you have, in order to be shot at and to shoot at people and take other people's lives, in order to justify that, you have to dehumanize. There's no way to get around it. You have to dehumanize. And in life, especially with indigenous peoples, there seems to be, in European peoples especially, there seemed to be a inherent mentality that anybody that was not of European descent had to be beneath them. So in order to justify the colonization process, the forced assimilation, the forced culturation, and the forced Christianization processes will dehumanize you, therefore will be justified in civilizing you, in making you acceptable human beings. Even in the 1950s and 1960s and 70s, we weren't, Osage people were not viewed as being civilized. However, we talked to some of our community leaders today with the Osage communities, and they felt that they were civilized. And with some of the Lakota people from Rosebud and some from Pine Ridge, they thought they were civilized. and they weren't viewed as being civilized by the United States government, by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And it's been kind of interesting in the movie industry. I portrayed a character in the movie industry. If you worked there, you either had to be a savage, had to be the noble red man, or you had to be the mystical, metaphysical fool. You know, because there was a romanticizing tendency toward the movie industry to present indigenous peoples that way. And we're always kept in the past. We're always kept in history. Hardly ever does the movie industry and television industry in North America, but not Canada, but in North America, all represented in contemporary ways. I mean, I'm not the most intelligent person, I'm not the most beautiful person, or the best, well, I am the best looking. But I can play a judge in a TV show. I can play a judge in a movie. I can play an attorney. But we're never cast that way. We're always cast in historical characters. Years ago, a few years ago, I don't know if any of you remember the TV show Roseanne. You know, they had Floyd Westerman, and they had Charlie Hill and everybody else. Charlie came in and tried to incorporate his stand-up comedy into this TV show, and it just didn't work. They meant well, but it didn't work in trying to present Indian people in contemporary times. But hardly ever does that take place. I mean, I could be the boy next door. I could be the guy working in the garage. You know, I don't have to be the noble red man. I don't have to be the metaphysical fool. I am, but I don't have to be. Nonetheless, we're never presented in these ways. My character on Dr. Quinn, you know, he was a good guy, and I worked as technical advisor on that show. I met with the writers and directors, and the good thing about the show, it was probably the first TV show in the history of television that incorporated native thought into the writing, which I thought was really, really great. However, a lot of times, the network people at CBS felt that we were too intelligent for the audience because we have to write it at a third grade level. And we get above third grade level, and they didn't think the audience would be able to understand. So all of you are even dumber than I am. Nonetheless, and I was supposed to be playing a Southern Cheyenne medicine man, the metaphysical fool, but we had to make him human. And when I first started working on that show, and actually the first time we started shooting, they wanted me to speak in broken and pidgin English. And I absolutely refused. I still don't speak that way. And so we had a big meeting about it. Nobody got mad, nobody got angry, nobody screamed and hollered. We just talked about it. They asked me why I was speaking like this. And I said, well, that was when I actually had teeth. And I said, well, my feeling is that Joe Lando's character, that Sully, was intelligent enough to learn how to speak Cheyenne fluently. My character, Sweet Kind of Lovable Cloud Dancing, is intelligent enough to learn how to speak English fluently. And in actuality, I wound up speaking better English than the townspeople. They would not let me speak in conjunction because they were afraid that people would not be able to tell the difference between Sully and I. Now, if you took a picture of Sully and I don't care if you use color film, it's still going to come out black and white. So, if they can't tell the difference, then, you know, maybe they're just colorblind. I don't know. So, and a lot of these things, and, you know, Wes, a lot of times, is a great guy. He's a friend of mine. But sometimes you sacrifice your honor and dignity in order to present some of the characters that they asked him to portray. And he did a good job on Geronimo, I thought. I thought personally, and it's only my opinion, that it was fairly one-dimensional. And that's what I like about the character in Quinn. I got to be a multi-dimensional character. I got to show feeling and emotion. I got to laugh. I got to cry. I got to be a human being in that show. And so what it does, even though it's a period piece, is helps humanize indigenous peoples, help humanize native peoples. Now, part of our problem as native people, a lot of times, is that we're so colonized. We're so assimilated, so acculturated, and oftentimes we use our denominational beliefs in order to interpret traditional things. I am a traditional practitioner. And what that means, in Osage creation, there was a pipe. In those old ceremonies, there was a pipe. We call it no neompa. And in Lakota, it's called chanumpa. But there was a pipe. That direction came to me when I was 6 years old. At that time, I did not know what that meant. Because the big move and part of that civilization process, that forced assimilation, forced acculturation, was that we relinquished a lot of the stuff that the Osage people practice. Now, the unfortunate part of this is that in Wakobe, that particular culture that they practiced at the time is also considered a, in your terms, religious ceremony. And they relinquished that. They said, well, we put that stuff away. We don't talk about that stuff. We let that go. But what they don't consider today is the fact that, yeah, they relinquished it and they went to something else because they had no choice. Through the forced removals, through illnesses and deaths, and the threat of cultural genocide or nothing, then yeah, they did make that decision, and they chose that under extreme duress. I'm not a big advocate for colonization, and I don't promote it. I'm assimilated, I'm acculturated, but I'm damn sure not colonized. And I think that's the difference between myself and a lot of the Washaji people back home, is they're willing to accept what has happened and say, oh, we moved on. You know, the key to colonization now, and a lot of you are probably educators and doctors, and me, I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, but the key, the best identifier in colonization is when the people themselves who are subjugated and colonized say, we chose this. And that's exactly what they do. Rather than taking a stand for themselves and who they were, they're almost afraid, and my Osage people are almost afraid of who their ancestors were. They're almost afraid of the type of culture that they practiced and recognition and identifying that. So they themselves dehumanize us, our own people. They subjugate our own people. They reinforce that colonization process. So how are we to humanize ourselves? And that's through forced relinquishing, forced assimilation, forced acculturation, and forced Christianization. People get upset back home in Oklahoma country, in Osage country, part of the Bible Belt. I'm not Christian. I've had people walk away shaking their heads in disbelief that I do not believe in Jesus. I have people get angry at me because I don't believe in Christianity. Do I denigrate Christianity? No. I have a tremendous amount of respect for it. Because that's what I'm taught in my belief. You follow that pipe. You humanize yourself. Once you humanize yourself, you can help others to humanize themselves. That's how we humanize the dehumanized. In my belief, I am not allowed to run your belief down. Because we know that there are a lot of good ways. There's not just one good way. That respect, the foundation of every indigenous peoples on this earth is respect. But we view it differently than Europeans. Your viewpoint, for the most part, originally comes from the European world. Native worldview is totally different. Your concept of respect is one of power and control. A lot of times, I don't know how many of you or whoever spanked your kids or spanks your kids now, your grandkids. Well, I'll teach them respect. That's not respect. One is violence, and it's about power and control. Your ego is in conflict with that child. I'm the adult. I'm supposed to be smarter than you. Respect for indigenous people is teaching that child, treating that child as a human being and an adult from the time they're born until the time you go on. And Lakota, you can ask him, Wakaija. Wakaija. Today we translate it from missionary viewpoints, and it just means children. The convenience of missionaryism. It doesn't mean children. Sacred little ones. And was Jaja. We view it as them being sacred. But in missionary terms, we translate it as children. Grandchildren, you say, Jikawakiha, my grandchild. That which I love and respect. In Lakota, when you today, you hear people say, Tomkashila. Today is translated as grandfather. Yeah, you can view it as grandfather. That's not what it means. Home. First creation, that which came first. God. That which is with still in old age. She. A term of kinship. La. A term of respect. So basically what you're saying is conceptual. That which came first is still with us in old age that I love and respect. That's what we're saying. We need to decolonize our minds, decolonize our hearts to get back to the original understandings of our native languages. That's how you humanize the dehumanized. And in that, we have, as native peoples, to take the time to teach you the interpretations of those concepts. It's not up to us to get angry, get mad, because you turn off. Scream and holler. Yeah, I do that. My wife just laughs. You know, and I try, you know, a lot of funny things happen in native world. We laugh a lot. We're always laughing, even at the worst times in a person's life. We laugh. I had a brother pass away this last year. He died of MRSA. I mean, the reason I'm in this condition, he had back surgery and caught MRSA, but he had 4 surgeries within 2 weeks, and within that time period, he got that infection. Luckily, I had 2 surgeries on my neck and 1 on my back, so I'm a walking lightning rod from C2 on down to my tailbone. I have to teach my left leg how to walk again, and I'll get there. But funny things happen. He passed away. And he was a jokester, and we're always kidding around and making fun of each other. Tying myself up knots here. If you're really into it, you know, you might talk to me later. Anyway, we're always joking. And we had his services, had his funeral. I did the native portions of it. And I kept thinking to myself, well, he's just joking with us. He's pretending to be God. You wait and see. By the end of the wake, he'll get up out of that casket and say, hey, I was just joking with you. So when he was Catholic. So they had the Catholic Mass, and I thought, well, at the end of Mass, he'll get up out of that casket and say, hey, I was just joking with you. So when we took him to the cemetery, and as we started to do the service and started putting him in the ground, I thought, well, when we get down at the bottom of that hole, he'll get up out of that casket and say, hey, I was just joking with you. And I'll be darned, I got down at the bottom of the hole, and I thought to myself, damn, there went my $20 he owed me, you know, so. So as bad as it was and terrible as it was, we laughed. And we try to make you laugh in order to get some of our things across. But there's some things that are serious. But laughter is included in that. Sometimes you can get so holy, you miss actually what's being said and what's being done. And if you can't receive what's coming in. So we laugh. In my world, and he's aware of it, I was called a thundercloud. Doesn't make me anyone. Doesn't make me important. Doesn't give me recognition. Doesn't give me power. Doesn't give me control. It's just a responsibility. But we do things to make people laugh. But when you're laughing, you're not laughing at me. You're laughing at yourself, because we're an exact reflection of who you are. That's how we function. We're a balance in the universe for all of you guys. We get the world out of balance. Not everybody can do what we do, and it's extremely hard life. But again, it's just a responsibility. That's all it is. Well, I was talking to Barb last night. We were talking, and I was, you know, a lot of people get in the movie industry to be somebody. I was somebody before I got there. I worked as a stuntman for a lot of years, got beaten up, broken. That's why I'm in this condition. And ultimately it caught up with me. And then I was a horrible actor, and I thought, well, I better take some acting classes. I went out on a commercial audition, and I saw the first tape, and I was just absolutely, I stunk. I was really, not that I'm any better now, but you know, just got more experience to sneak. But I mean, it was really, so I took some acting classes. I love making people laugh. So I took some stand-up comedy classes and did comedy improvisation. And I love comedy improvisation. Stand-up comedy is pretty damn hard, because you're the only one out there. If you do something wrong in an improv group, you know, you can blame it on somebody else. Or if you're in a shooting, say Quinn, you screw up, you know, you can shoot it over, or you can blame somebody else. Stand-up comedy is pretty hard. So I absolutely admire those guys who succeed. But that's what we do, is just make people laugh. I'm not here to get angry at anybody. I had relatives go here. I had relatives go to St. Francis Mission School. My mom, she went to St. Francis. She absolutely hated it. I talked to my sister-in-law on the phone this morning. Her grandfather went here. For all of what you're trying to do is absolutely great and wonderful, but they don't talk about the abuses that went on. Rarely does anybody talk about the physical abuse, the cultural genocide that took place, the spiritual genocide that took place, or the sexual abuse that took place, the deaths that took place. I got to go out to the cemetery too myself, but I got to go for a different reason. He's bringing people together. I got to do some stuff to help those kids that are stuck here. Also. But that didn't come from any human being. It came from my direction. But I will do that. My people that I'm enrolled with, I'm enrolled at Rosebud, at Osage tribe. They even using colonized terms to talk about me. They call me the renegade. I thought maybe this is saying individual thinker, but you know. But they didn't, you know. They used this colonized term, call me renegade. You know, and in my lifetime, and from the time, and I'm not that old, actually I am ancient. I tell my kids, you know, when I started school, there was only 3 chapters in American history. So that's how old I am. And now I think, what, there's 40? So, but anyway, they have a tendency to glorify things and forget about things that took place. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard, we had an assistant chief. We had a young lady from North Dakota come down, Yellow Horse, I can't remember her first name right now. She got her doctor's on a historical trauma. That's how she received her doctorate. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to any of those workshops. It's absolutely fabulous. But the assistant chief gets up and says, well, we have no historical trauma. And then he says, well, I went to boarding school for a semester, and that was, you know, pretty traumatic. But I got rid of it through blah, 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 and I'm not going to say what he said there, because I'm not going to run down somebody's beliefs. And I thought to myself, well, that's amazing. He just discounted 300 to 400 years of Osage history, just like that. Because he's colonized. People there don't want to read historical things about Osage people if they feel it's going to threaten their Christian denominational beliefs. There's a book out, and some of you educators might remember the author, and I can't think of it right off the top of my head. Some of this is medication I'm taking, just help you. I just draw blanks. I apologize. It's called Unaffected by the Gospel. And the professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, had written it. And I think it's a book that every Osage person should read. And I've been trying to get the gift shop, the Osage gift shop, the museum, and different places back in Alaska to order this book. And it's not about anything in relationship to attacking or threatening Christian denominational beliefs. It's a great historical book for the political issues that were taking place during the 17th and 18th century for the Osage people. But just by the mere fact that you mention unaffected by the gospel, it's extremely very threatening So the Osage people, and at the time I suggested this, the tribal council, and some of the people there, you'd have thought I was, talking about blowing up the whole nation. Because they just absolutely freaked out. Well, read the thing. Tell me what you think. But just by the title, they won't look at it. To me, and that tells me a person lives in fear a tremendous amount. I oftentimes get people back home trying to convert me to their particular denominational belief. And they'll never do it. But they keep trying. I have to give credit for persistence. But I'm sorry, I gotta take a drink of water here. I'm kind of like Mark Rubio. So the thing is, I don't have to move around for the camera, and the second thing is, I just can't. But, it's amazing. When people live in fear, they conduct themselves in a way they wouldn't normally conduct themselves. They let that fear overtake them. They've let colonization overtake them. My Lakota people are returning to all their traditions. I remember I practiced and started a ceremony. I didn't start it, I helped Elmer Running. I started Sundance at Ironwood in 1980. My first commitment for that particular ceremony was in 79. In 1980, he started the one at Ironwood. There was 8 of us that danced there. A lot of people at that time were calling us heathens, savages, that we were dealing with the devil. We're going to wake up our ancestors, which is not a bad thing. That we were going to bring evil and stuff to the nation. Today, a lot of those people say, over the years, I want to find my culture. I want to learn my culture. And now they are dancing. And they understand the prayer. It's not about courage is included, but it's not about that. It's not about ego. It's about dancing for the people. Your relatives. Giving thanks for things that you've received. Lives, human lives. Or maybe somebody's going through a surgery in the future. You want help for that. You dance for that reason. Dance for that person. Your grandmother's ill, so you want that person to live. You dance for that person. You never do it for yourself. It's always for somebody else. So what we do, we're going to do a ceremony. We listen to all those people. Oklahoma, I had to start a ceremony in Oklahoma, which is Sundance. And down there, I went through the same thing 25 years ago, 30 years ago, well, let me say it's been 40 years ago now, in South Dakota. Heard the same things, except in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they often refer to me as Beelzebub. But actually with the Oklahoma accent and the way they think of it, I'm known as Beelzebub. So, it's amazing. And the irony is, the Christian people, the good Christian people in Oklahoma, they're the ones who helped me and supported me, non-Indians. The Indians, who I guess I was kind of naive and everything, are the ones who tried to stop the tribal council. members of the tribal council. And then a little way down the line, DEA was trying to take control of Native American church. They want to say who could practice, who couldn't. Well, I get out like this and I talk. I ask them, let me know what you want me to say. I'll speak on your behalf. But you have to choose the words. Let me know what you want to say. First thing out of the main guy's mouth to try to stop me was, well, we have freedom of religion, you know. Funny how that works. Oklahoma, a lot of the Christian people believe in freedom of religion as long as it's Christian religion. And that happens a lot throughout the country. There isn't that reciprocity of respect. Because you have a different understanding of what respect is. If any of you have to convince me that you're right about your belief, then what I know is you truly don't understand what you say you believe. Because I don't have to convince you that I'm right. I don't care whether you believe I'm right or not. The only one it matters to is me. I'm the only one that has to live with it. You don't need to act like me. You don't need to walk like me. You don't need to pray like me. You don't need to be like me. And the only thing I see is I may be ugly, but I'm not that ugly. So, how, as indigenous peoples, and I'm using the Osages as the example, do we humanize ourselves? We have to decolonize our minds. I'm not saying we have to go back and live in our thatched houses that we had before, live the way we did before. Like Dakota, we have teepees up there, but we don't have to go back and live if you not unless you really want to. We live in houses, we have cars, we have trucks. And I drove my sacred Tahoe, 2 different reservations. I drove my wife's sacred Traverse up here, you know, and you know, we are assimilated, we are acculturated. We can't get around that fact. But we have to decolonize. We have to decolonize in order to get Hollywood to decolonize us. And that's the sad thing. We've had scripts go to studios and network that would portray us in a different light as more human beings, and it's not what they want. How many of you think that the Dances with Wolves is really about the Lakotas? And it's not. It's just a thematic device to move the story along between Costner and the white woman. It presented good aspects of Lakota culture. Actually, my adopted brother Albert, is the one who translated that script, and he put native thought, Lakota thought, in that translation of the script. But that isn't what you read on the screen. What you read on the screen and the subtitle was the light English style. And not to mention, a few times, she spots in there, and some of those guys, women in this area speaks like a woman. Because a woman had taught him how to speak. He wasn't around any male speakers, but a woman had taught him how to speak. So we, as human beings, have to decolonize ourselves. We have to decolonize our mindset. We have to decolonize each other in order to humanize ourselves. Get away from that standing fear that we live in. Get away from that fear that we operate from. With any indigenous peoples on this continent, honor, dignity, and integrity or the things you strive for. With any warrior culture, you had that. With Wahhabi culture, you had that. With that spiritual culture, you had that. But we don't have it anymore. We've relinquished our humanity so that we can allow the U.S. government to allow us to practice what we think is culture. We have Ilonshka for the Osages, we have Native American Church for the Osages, and we have a kind of a warped view of what sovereignty is in the new government that we have. We don't have sovereignty. We have what we're allowed to have. But we as Osage people, we as Native people, we have to allow ourselves to decolonize. If you as Indian people, if any Indian people, anybody else who wants to help, if you want to say reindigenization, I don't care. As long as you do it. Because that's what's going to emphasize honor, dignity, and integrity. That's what's going to emphasize respect. Boarding schools, the value base that we came home with was one of violence and abuse, one of manipulation and control. We as indigenous peoples did not have spousal abuse on this continent or child abuse on this continent until the Europeans came over here. Now, in the early days, in the 17th century, when Osages were dealing with the governments and dealing with everyday Christianity, they would ask for mission schools. And why did they do that? Militarily, you learn about other people when you learn to speak their language. You learn how they function. You learn how they negotiate. You learn how they think. This wasn't because they had a better culture. And just because you have material power and goods doesn't mean you have a superior culture. All it means is you have a greater power and goods at the time. And who writes history? The winner. I mean, anybody who speaks against the reality of history, we're often told that we want to rewrite history. No, we don't want to rewrite history. We want to present it as it was. And in history, good, bad, and indifferent. There's no good guys, there's no bad guys. It just is. But we have to learn how to humanize ourselves in order to allow you to learn that we are human beings. We have to stand up with that honor and dignity and integrity. We have to stand up with that respect so that you, as the dominant culture, can learn something. You showed that picture earlier, or depicting the use of a pipe and stuff. Today you guys call it a peace pipe. I have community leaders back home calling it a peace pipe because their comment is, well, we're not at war with the United States government anymore. Holy mackerel, how colonized can you be? Yeah, it's used for peace because you don't lie with it. You can negotiate, but you don't manipulate. You don't cheat with it. Because it is a powerful tool connected to the Creator. Whatever you want to call the Creator. Wakantanka. Wakona. God. Ethel, Ligor, I don't care. Whatever you call the Creator. besides Beelzebub. That's what it's about. It's a tool to speak to them. And that's all it is. To teach us how to be better human beings, to better humanize ourselves, so that we stop dehumanizing ourselves, so that the dominant society stops dehumanizing us, so that Hollywood stops dehumanizing us. And it's extremely hard to do. Any of you here, when you walk out of here, you can sit here and tell me, just shut up my butt. I'm not here. I think it might be one of you that might hear something in all the trash that's coming out of my mouth. Or I guess it could be received as words of wisdom. I don't know. And if that happens, I've done my job. We were talking last night. You want to show a series of pictures? And not taking away anything from other people's presentations or what they do. If you're more worried about that picture and listening to what I'm having to say, I'm not doing my job. But if you look at the picture, how many people you see smiling? It's never addressed of all the crap they had to go through. Yeah, they look like nice little civilized mini soldiers. They march, carry sticks around. They cut their hair. They don't talk about the delicing, the humiliating, stripping them down and delicing them, whether they need it or not. Cutting their hair. Now, I'm taught, other tribes have different ways, and that's fine, but I'm taught my hair, and the reason my hair is long, that it's an extension of my soul. I don't cut my soul, a piece of my soul off for my ego, or just to look pretty. So, therefore, I want to hang on to it. And I can almost guarantee you most of the kids who had long hair didn't cut their hair because it is an extension of who they are, their identity. But in order to give the image that they're civilized, then they had to do it. They were forced to do it. And that is dehumanizing. Now, there are some nations where they do have haircuts that way for men. It may be short, and that's their way. Doesn't mean it's a bad way. Doesn't mean it's different from mine. I mean, it's contradicts mine. It's just different. Like in ceremonies, we go different places. People say, "Oh, they're not doing it right." Not for me to judge. It's just different. So our effort in dehumanizing our minds, we have to humanize them in order to get rid of it. Post-traumatic stress disorder of survival of boarding schools. Anybody that is part native, anybody has a relative, you suffer from some degree, some aspect of PTSD of boarding school. I guarantee it. Either in the way you parent, either in the way you use violence to control things, spousal abuse, child abuse. I teach parenting with traditional tribal values. And the thing I've found all over the United States and in South America with the Amazonian people and throughout central Mexico is we all parent the same way. And that's with respect. We didn't spank, we didn't slap, we didn't scream and holler, we didn't humiliate, and we damn sure didn't sexually abuse our kids. Sexual abuse on a child back in the old days was an instant death penalty. I think it should be today. Because that's what a lot of these kids suffered when they went here at Carlisle. Physical abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse, and sexual abuse. We can glorify all the material things, but the reality is what they went through. I have friends who committed suicide because they went to boarding school and they were abused in that way. They cannot function, and they did not function because of it. So they did the only thing they knew how to do, and that was to commit suicide. Because of the destruction of the culture, they don't have that time. They disassociate themselves. They use alcohol to try and ease the pain. They use drugs to try and ease the pain. The lady who coined PTSD for combat personnel also identifies survival of boarding school people, children and generations down the line as having PTSD because they suffer the same traumatic experiences and react the same as heavy combat personnel. When you have somebody 5- and 6-year-old reacting from that kind of stress and trauma, you definitely have a problem. So we as Native people have to humanize ourselves before you guys do. We as Native people have to humanize ourselves before Hollywood does. Yeah, a lot of people, that was the only jobs they could get was to entertain white people. Even the state of Oklahoma today is wanting to use Indian people to entertain white people, to entertain tourists who come in. When I first got back to Oklahoma, I'd get calls from Oklahoma Tourist Bureau wanting me to dress up and entertain white people, actually all people, it doesn't make a difference what color you are, for them. And I said, well, how much are you going to pay me? And this is the tourist department in the state of Oklahoma. Well, we thought you'd want to do it for us to advocate your culture. And I said, well, if you paid a white guy to dress up like this, you'd pay him a lot of money, wouldn't you? Well, yeah. Well, why not pay me? Over the years, they stopped calling me because I wanted paid. And I'm not going to go just to entertain somebody. I might go talk, I might sign autographs, do things like that. But I'm not dressing up just to entertain somebody unless I get paid extremely well for it. People want me to come to powwows, they want me to dress up, and I have the wardrobe from Dr. Quinn. In fact, I made most of it that I wore. I don't look good in jeans dresses. However, the young lady who was the hooker, I looked pretty good in that dress. But they want me to dress up like that, and so they can make money. And I have my own Osage people do that. The guy comes and says, well, we need to do this and this and this. You need to come out, and help attract people. Well, what are you going to pay me? And the guy got offended. I have to pay you? Well, yeah, my life's a business now. What are you going to pay me? And then later on, another guy, Osage guy, come up. Well, we're having this thing here, why don't you come out, draw people out there. Well, what are you going to pay me? Nothing. Well, then I ain't going to be there. They think I have to do things for free just because they're Osage. They think I have to do things for free because I'm Native. But they'll pay some white guy to come. And white people will pay some white guy to come before they'll pay a Native. Hey, Barb, I am getting paid, right? You know, how we can tell this, you know, I can sit up here and say, I can say honest Indian, you know, and I can get away with it. You know, well, to say honest white guy, you know I'm lying. Because there aren't any. Hey. I was at the White House one time and did that, you know. Politicians were in back, and there's 100 and some kids and their parents are in the hall there. And I said that, and politicians sat back there, arms crossed, didn't smile. I said, well, see those guys back there, they're not laughing. Everybody turned around. That's the reason they're not laughing, because they don't know any white guys that are honest. They're politicians, you know. So anyway, I'm going to wind this down. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer or make up an answer. I'll lie to you. I'm getting paid for this one, so I will lie to you. Make you sound good. I'm a sweet, kind, lovable guy. I don't bite, so if you see me out, feel free to come up and talk to me. One thing I do want to mention, though, is we talk about respect and honor and dignity. Every one of you whom I have met, and those who I will meet in the future, I always shake your hand. And the first thing I say, it's an honor to meet you. For me, it truly is. And the reason is when I touch your hand, you have shared that much of your humanity with you. And for me, that truly is an honor. It's not about my doing something for you. It's you who do it for me. I just happen to have a different kind of job. So again, it's just about, in quote unquote, the people. You know, en Lakota they say, and also say that all my relatives. And it doesn't mean just Indian relatives, it means all humanity. Four legs, the wingeds, the other dimensions that you guys don't see. Those are my relatives. Those are your relatives. What a lot of people think is supernatural, it's all natural. There is no supernatural. Everything physical is supposed to be, it's all natural. And I'm probably right now the only unnatural thing here because I'm in dire need of a cup of coffee. I'm a professional drinker. I carry a coffee pot with me wherever I go. I carry a thermos to bed. I mean, I'm hardcore. I wake up in the middle of the night. I don't want to get up and go make coffee. I just pour it out my thermos. But I did that because I lived in a place where we didn't have the electricity, so it's so thank you for talking to us.